An entitled jerk tries to cut past everybody at passport control as he felt his flight was more important than everybody else's. But after taking a red eye just to get where we were at, the over 200 people in line decided that this was not going to happen as we all started shouting and shaming this guy for ever think of cutting in line. And I've never been more satisfied to watch someone get shamed. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was waiting in the passport line in Iceland where a lot of flights land very early in the morning and they have a short layover all before connecting to a new flight. Me and so many others got off our flight that landed at 6:30 in the morning, waiting in passport control, and then had to make a connecting flight that was leaving at 7:20 in the morning. The non-European side of the passport line had nearly 200 plus people waiting in line, and it was going about as fast as it could. And that is incredibly slow, and that's just the reality of it. At 6:30 in the morning, most people took their tiredness and knew the best bet was to wait in line and hope the flight waits for most of its passengers, or just quietly accepts that that connection isn't going to happen. Well, that is except for one entitled family. At the back of the line, this one man goes nearly to the front and pesters this half-awake 20-year-old kid about cutting in front of him because apparently his flight is leaving soon. But it's like, yeah, no kidding, everybody's is. The kid says sure, and I don't blame him. It is just too early to argue. This line cutter then waves to the back and shouts out, "He said we can go in front of him." And 6 other entitled people, maybe his family, come striding their way up to the front of the line. But right at that moment, there was an absolute uproar of everybody around them. People started screaming at them, asking what they think they're doing, and demanding that they go back to where they were and that they are not special. Now, this line cutter tried to reason his way and say to everybody, "Oh, but we have a connection that leaves at 7:30. But the resounding response was everybody saying, "Yeah, we all do too." And it was honestly so poetic. It was gratifying in real time to see this entitled man look around and see 200 plus people in the exact same situation as him, and that he indeed was not very special. He finally sheepishly waved his family back to get back in his old spot at the back of the line. I finally made it through passport control, and I made it to my New York flight at around 7 o'clock, and my European partner was able to get to the gate a little bit quicker and beg the people at the front desk to hold the gate and wait for me there. And I was one of the last ones on the flight. I was in the front third of the passport line, while the line cutters were way behind me. So I don't know if they made their flight or not, but regardless, it was definitely entertaining. Yeah, I can't stand when people try this crap, where they're like, "Oh yeah, can I cut in front of you?" And then when someone says yes, they try to bring in a whole group of people in front of them. Like, if it's just one person, I'm not going to care in the slightest. But the fact that there was an entire family and he really tried to slip past everybody, like that part alone would have driven me nuts, and I would have been like, oh no, that is definitely not happening. So good for you and the rest of the people in that line for not taking that for a second, because that kind of behavior, in my opinion, is completely inappropriate. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for making my in-laws stay in a hotel after they surprised us on our family vacation? Here's what happened. I'm a 37-year-old female, and I took a beach vacation with my husband and our 3 kids. We also invited his sister, husband, and 2 kids, as we had a detached bedroom from the main house, and we genuinely like hanging out with them. I told her we wanted to keep it small this year since we have a new baby, and I'm pretty fresh postpartum, so I didn't want to make it too stressful. While we were at the beach, we see my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, their stepson, and his girlfriend all pull up. This is a 3-hour drive from where we live, and they came to surprise us at the beach since we haven't seen the stepson in 2 months. My sister-in-law said that they've been planning this for weeks, and she gave them the mile marker. Now, this was a cool surprise, but afterwards, they expected to stay with us in our 1-bedroom, 1-bath rental house with no real doors and only sliding doors. They had no plans for lodging or food, so we had to get to work to make dinner, which really was fine because I had packed extra food. Due to space constraints, I put the baby down for a nap in the restroom, which is also where we had to put the 2 pack-and-plays. When I went back to check on him a little later, the stepson and his girlfriend were in the transparent glass shower together, steps away from my 3-month-old baby. I then went back to the kitchen and I told my sister-in-law that they cannot stay with us, but my husband told them that they could stay because he is out of touch with what that would actually mean. Literally, we're talking 6 adults and 2 toddlers sharing one restroom where 2 babies are sleeping. I then told her what I saw with the stepson and the girlfriend in the shower, again reminding her that it's too many people going in and out of the restroom with 2 kids already asleep in there. Well, she understood and started looking up hotels. Now, at this point, the girlfriend was already scoping out the couch, and she really could have slept there, but after wrestling 2 babies to sleep in the restroom and my 4-year-old to sleep in the actual actual bed, the couch was the only place I could sit and have a glass of wine at the end of the night in peace. After getting a hotel room, they stayed at the beach house until midnight playing poker on the patio, and they were shouting the entire time. My husband asked his dad to please be quiet since the kids were already sleeping, and my father-in-law loudly shouted, "Shut up," and just kept on playing. And at this point, this has caused major conflict with my husband, as he believes we should have just let 4 additional people stay simply because they are family. But you know what? We paid for half the hotel room, and my sister-in-law paid for the other half. Now, for additional context, we have been to the beach one other time with my sister-in-law last year, but have never been with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. The stepson has been gone for 2 months, but will be in town the next 3 weeks, so it's not like we wouldn't have seen him the next day when we returned. I understand they wanted this to be a fun surprise, but no one considered how this would impact us as a family traveling with 3 small children in a relatively small beach house. So I need to know, am I the jerk for making my in-laws stay in a hotel after they surprised us on our family vacation? What should I do? No, you are definitely not the jerk, because what they did was super rude. Did they really think it would be appropriate for them to all stuff into this 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment? Because basically that's exactly what it is. We have kids sleeping in the bathroom, there's no room for everything, and these people walk in and say, "Okay, here we are." Like, I'm sorry, that's so inappropriate, it's not even funny. And I really think they should have at least had a hotel room ready for them so that they wouldn't impose on you and your family. So no, you are not the jerk, because honestly, I would have done the exact same thing. Am I the jerk for refusing to inherit the family farm and giving it to my younger brother instead? Because right now, my wife is furious with me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 36-year-old male, and I grew up on a big farm that was owned by my family, who worked as farmers for generations. Much to the detriment of my parents, I worked the farm life from a very young age. I never liked dirt or grime, and farm animals were also never my thing. So to no one's surprise, I left the farm when I turned 18, and I never looked back. I currently live in a big city, and I still love my family very much, and I visit the farm from time to time, but I'm always the happiest when I return to my urban lifestyle. My mother passed away 3 years ago, and 2 months ago, I unexpectedly lost my father due to a work accident. This left my younger brother and I as the sole beneficiaries of their estate, and for the sake of the story, I'll call my brother Tom. I didn't expect to be left with much, since my family helped me out financially more than enough times while they were still alive. I honestly only wanted a couple family trinkets and heirlooms to keep as a keepsake, but to my surprise, as my brother and I sat down with the attorney to discuss our father's will, we discovered that I was left with the majority of the farm, while Tom was left with the rest, meaning that I owned about 3/4 of it, and he only had 1/4. Now, the only reason I can fathom behind this decision is that unlike Tom, I have 2 children, and so maybe that's why I was given the bigger share. But I'm not entirely sure, since my children had their own inheritance in the will. Either way, this split of inheritance is absolutely ridiculous, since unlike myself, Tom actually lived on the farm and dedicated his entire life to working on it alongside our parents. I saw that Tom was also shaken up by the decision, so I assured him that I found it absurd as well, and I don't mind forfeiting the land to him. Now, Tom said that I didn't have to do that, but even still, I insisted. After some back and forth on the topic, we mutually agreed to settle this between ourselves on a later date, when everything would be transferred under our names as our parents intended. I recently informed my wife of my decision regarding my inheritance, and she is furious with me for wanting to give most of it up. She is arguing that my decision is impulsive and short-sighted, since the farmland is worth a fortune and I'm just giving it away without a second thought. But I told her that the land is worth a fortune only for those who actually intend on doing something with it, and since I neither intend to sell it or even farm on it, it is effectively useless to me. My wife continued to say that it might be useless to me, but I should think about our children who might one day want to start farming. I told her in that case, I'll transfer only half of the land to Tom, so our children could have 1/4 of the land at their disposal in the hypothetical scenario that they get into farming one day. My wife is now not speaking with me until I reconsider my decision, so I need some unbiased opinions here. Am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, I don't think you're the jerk entirely in this situation, but I do think it would be foolish to give this up without having any kind of monetary exchange in some kind of way. Like, sure, your brother Tom does live on the farm and he does take care of all the land, but I think your wife has a good point as well. You're not thinking about your family, and it's kind of short-sighted in the long run. So I think at the bare minimum, in terms of some kind of compromise, splitting it 50-50 really would be a good idea, and this at least gives you something to look forward to in the future. You could even say to your brother, hey, you can use the half that I have, but please give me a portion of whatever you make off of the crops or whatever you want to do with it. So I don't think giving it all up to Tom would be a good idea, but maybe maybe retaining some of it might be something you could pursue. It honestly depends on the nuance of your relationship with Tom and all this other stuff, but regardless, in my opinion, I don't think it would be a good idea to give it all up. And sure, this is your inheritance, but your wife is still your wife, and her opinion absolutely matters. And in my opinion, I think there's a better way than just giving it up in the way that you want to. Am I the jerk for not picking up my former foster daughter in the middle of the night after she called for help after running away? Because right now, my friends are saying that I'm a monster, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. 2 years ago, my wife and I decided to foster. We have 3 children, and we felt terrible that there were kids out in the world that needed a loving home. Our first 2 placements only lasted a few days, but then we were placed with a girl that we will call Olivia. She's 11 years old, and I won't go into personal details about her, but we were her 5th foster home since she was 9 years old. My wife and I literally tried everything to help out, but she was too rebellious. She ran away, she broke things, she stole things, and she lied. I mean, she lied so much that it was insane, and it was months and months of just this. And just when we thought things were getting better, she would just ruin it. The 6th time that she ran away, we had had enough, and at that point, we asked her to be removed. She said, "Oh, I knew you didn't care. I knew you didn't want me. You just wanted the money." And at that moment, my wife and I lost it. We reminded her how we listened to her, took her places that she wanted to go, and we encouraged her. We told her that we didn't spend a dime of the foster care money, and instead we saved it for her so that she could have money when she turned 18. We even showed her the bank account with thousands of dollars in it and said that when she's 18, she can still have it. I think it was at that point that she realized we cared, but it was way too late then. She went back into the system, and I'm honestly not sure what happened. Life then eventually went on. We had another baby, we moved a few miles away, but then last Saturday night, my wife received a call from Olivia, who at this point is now 13 years old. She put it on speakerphone, and apparently Olivia ran away from another foster home and had been living on the streets for days. Eventually, she made it to our old neighborhood, but I told her that we moved. She asked us if we could pick her up from a certain location and also wanted to know if we would take her in. She was crying and saying that she loved the kids and that she misses my wife's cooking and that she wants me to teach her how to play the piano. I felt bad for her, but taking her back was absolutely impossible. We just feared that she would run away again. So we told her that we would be there, but we called the police instead and they took her in. The police contacted us a few days later, saying that Olivia's foster parents were pressing charges. She stole a few things, and Olivia had a vape on her with some illegal substances in it. We were told that she would probably go to juvenile detention until she's 18 years old, and this is what we were told, although we're not sure about what will happen. They then asked us if we wanted any updates, and we just declined. We also asked them not to have her contact us ever again. Well, today we were telling some friends about this, and while some agreed with us, a few people called us monsters. One of our friends said, "I would have scooped that baby up and kept her." Now, legally, there was nothing we could do, but are we jerks for not helping her out? What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, I want to say that this situation is very sad. Olivia clearly has a really rough upbringing, and she's lashing out and literally pushing everybody away. That is, until you and your wife stepped in and actually showed her some love. This clearly left an impact on her because when she was out on the street, she looked to you two to try and let her back in the house. But in my opinion, at that point, it is too little too late. We're talking 2 years later, and with both of you having a baby in the house. You already tried to let her in once, and she ruined that opportunity, and you had to move on with your life. So in my opinion, I think it would have been a terrible idea to let her back in. She's clearly not in a good place, and there's not much else you can do to try and help her out. And that doesn't mean that you don't care, but instead, it means that you're preserving your peace and you're protecting your children. Like the fact that she has illegal substances in a vape and that she's stealing stuff from another house, in my opinion, is more than enough reason for me to be like, no, I'm sorry, but you can't live with us. And yes, it is unfair to Olivia, but you need to protect your family and your kids. And in my opinion, I think it would be a terrible idea to let her back in your house. Am I the jerk for telling my mom that she got exactly what she deserved after she dug through my grandma's past in a way that not only offended her, but also banned her from ever seeing her again in the retirement community that she currently lives in? Here's what happened. So my mom went behind my grandmother's back several months ago and tracked down my grandma's half-sister to try and force a reconciliation between them, despite knowing that grandma did not want to and did not claim her half-sister as a real sibling. Well, my grandma was furious, and she told my mom that the half-sister is just some other woman's child and not her real sibling, and her chance to have siblings passed away with her mom. After my great-grandmother passed away, my great-grandfather remarried someone who had a very extensive reputation for going after married and widowed men. My grandma thought the woman woman was disgusting, and it wasn't helped by the fact that my great-grandpa's new wife was also the other woman to one of the parents of Grandma's friends, so the hatred already existed. They went on to have a daughter together who Grandma never looked at as anything other than this woman's daughter, and she saw her dad as a traitor and disgusting for going after someone like his wife, so she never formed any connection with her, and she moved out at like 16 years old in order to get away from under them. My great-grandpa's wife's reputation proved to be more than true, because even while married to my great-grandpa, there were more and more married or widowed men who were going in and out of that house. At some point several years ago, after Grandma moved out, her half-sister reached out and asked if she would take her because she wasn't happy at home, and Grandma just said no. And that was the last time they spoke. My mom and her siblings grew up knowing that Grandma had a half-sister that she wanted nothing to do with. But sometime during her life, Mom decided she could be the one to change Grandma's mind, and she waited until Grandma was older and Grandpa was gone, and she's been living alone for 2 years now in a retirement community. She tracked down the half-sister and got that woman's hopes up because she always hoped to have a relationship with my grandma, and then showed up at my grandma's house with the half-sister. And trust me, it didn't go well. The half-sister left heartbroken, and my grandma tore my mom a new one. I have never seen my grandma actually angry before. She called my mom a bratty little know-it-all who thought she could ignore people's wishes and boundaries, and she told mom that she couldn't even look at her. My mom argued back that grandma has a sister and she should know her before it's too late. Grandma then sent me to the store to grab some snacks, and by the time I got back, Grandma told Mom that she was not welcome back there ever again. Now, my mom thought that Grandma would calm down, but she learned a couple of weeks ago when she tried to visit that she was banned from the community, and my mom was horrified. At home, she wouldn't stop talking about it, and I told her she got what was coming to her, especially with what she did. I told her if I did something like that, she would ground me so fast. But just because she's an adult, she thought she could get away with it. Well, my mom told me that I shouldn't stick my nose into her business and that I have zero right to judge her. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You're definitely not the jerk, but your mom absolutely is. She dug up your grandmother's past, and this is all after having a literal lifetime of knowing that this is a taboo subject. This is completely against your grandmother's wishes, and it really does throw a wrench in the wheel in the family, because now your mom is literally physically banned from the community that your grandma lives in. And that just really sucks. It really sucks overall, because all your mom had to do was just not do this and everything would be fine. Or at least have some kind of conversation with the grandma to be like, hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe there's some time to still like find some kind of connection with this lady. Or at least like revisit her opinion on this instead of just being like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do. So to that end, I really don't blame you for speaking up, because if that was my mom doing that to my grandma, I absolutely would have lost my mind and been like, yeah, you got exactly what you deserved. Because at the end of the day, she absolutely did. And the fact that she went behind your grandmother's back to do this in the first place, in my opinion, is incredibly disrespectful. Am I the jerk for throwing a gift from my dad's wife in the trash all before I moved out of the house simply because of the way they treated me growing up? Here's what happened. I'm an 18-year-old male, and I moved out of my dad's house last month, which was the day after I turned 18. I no longer live in the same town, and instead, I moved in with 3 of my friends who are all starting college next month, and I'm about to start trade school. I'm working until trade school starts to afford rent and food. The 4 of us are all splitting the cost between us, and I did not take money from my dad. The day I left, my dad's wife gave me this photo album saying it was a growing up gift, and this photo album was photos of the 7 years since she and dad married. Now, I did not appreciate the gift, nor did I want it, which I told her straight to her face. She then told me to take it and I should have family photos when I moved out, but before I left, I threw the album into the trash. Now, to explain why I did this, I need to give some background. When I was 10 years old, my mom passed away. She had an allergic reaction while we were out for a celebratory dinner for my dad, and she passed away on the way to the hospital. Mom really was the glue that held us together, and dad and I were never very close before she died. But 6 weeks later, my dad had already met his wife, and they boxed up all of my mom's things, her clothing, jewelry, photos of her phone, keys, literally anything that was just hers, and they brought it all to the dump. I never got anything, and neither did any of her family. I was furious and will never forgive my dad for what he did. The very next day, he moved that woman in, and they were married 4 months later, while also having a small but actual formal wedding. They dragged me to it and pretended everything was fine and normal. She even gave a speech about being so excited to have a son of her own and all the adventures that we're gonna have together. When I was 12 years old, I got copies of a couple of photos photos of mom from extended family, and I put them in my room. Well, my dad's wife found the photos, and she removed them, saying that I didn't need those, and that I would be bringing down everybody in the house for having them. Well, when she said that, I yelled at her and I cursed at her, wishing that she didn't exist and that she was erased, but my dad yelled at me for disrespecting his wife. And then I told him that day that I wish that he had passed away instead of my mom. He then told me that he wished he'd let my grandparents take me, which was right after the fight they had about my mom's stuff going to the dump. And you know what? I told him that I wish he had. The 7 years of living with the two of them were an absolute nightmare, and I'm so glad that I'm gone. I have no respect for either of them, and I don't care that my dad lost someone too, because he threw her away, and not just from him. After I settled into my apartment, Dad suddenly remembered my number for the first time in 3 years and called me out for upsetting and disrespecting his wife by throwing her gift away. He told me that she did it out of love, but I just ignored it. She sent me a text on Dad's phone telling me that I should be surrounded by happy family memories, which was why she made the album in the first place. I then sent a photo of my room, which has photos of my mom, which are ones that I got copies of, and this was the only reply I made. But I then got several text messages, some from an unknown number after I blocked Dad, saying that I was acting spitefully. So truly, I really need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're not the jerk at all. I think I would have reacted the exact same way, especially if my family tried to erase my mom. Like seriously, he threw all of her stuff away in the dump. He didn't even think to be like, hey, let's go through it together as a family. It seems like he went from, okay, my wife passed away, to then saying, okay, time to get rid of all of her stuff in like what, a month's time? Like sure, I understand people wanting to move on with their life, but the way he did it is so toxic. It's not okay. Like it really does seem like he didn't care about her at all. So no, I don't think you're the jerk at all for throwing away those photos, because the way your dad and his wife acted towards you growing up, in my opinion, is completely unfair. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.